Welcome. This is our first event with the URiFM group and the PRiMER group. Very happy to see everybody. My name is Amanda Kost. You have signed up for this workshop. You're here today to learn how to create a publishable family medicine research project in 6 easy steps. And as I said, this is our first URiFM and PRiMER collaboration. If you all missed it, we're recording this bit, so you are on camera, and welcome to everybody.
Excellent. So we are part of a larger STFM diversity initiative, and we are, for ourselves, a scholars work group that's focused on advancing research amongst underrepresented in medicine. And my name is Cesar Gonzalez. I'm a clinical health psychologist and associate program director of our family med residency at Mayo Clinic, and we're going to have others introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Magdalena Pasarica, and I'm at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. I'm a professor of family medicine, and I also have a PhD in nutrition.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Tyson Pankey. I am a clinical health psychologist at Duke University in their School of Medicine. I'm also the associate program director of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the training programs in that department.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Angela Antonikowski. I'm a clinical health psychologist. I'm Chief Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer at Albany Medical College in upstate New York.
And unfortunately, Dr. Allen is not with us because she had a baby and is bonding with her baby. But Dr. Allen was one of our graduates at Mayo Clinic, and she's actually returning back. So I just want you all to know that she's just joining us here in virtual spirit. Mindy?
I'm Mindy Householder, and I'm with STFM Foundation as the development manager, and I am supporting the work group.
So let's first break down why this workshop is relevant. And the relevance is that there is a lack of underrepresented individuals who are researchers in family medicine. And now this issue has both distal and proximate causes, if you look at the bottom here. So we really want to get to the root distal causes. So this includes systemic barriers such as racism in academic medicine, histories and patterns of exclusion, the perceived lack of research for minority issues and the like. And so what's important to keep in mind is that these systemic factors impact these individual level phenomena, lack of tangible research skills, potentially not understanding the impact of research on health disparities, just to name a few. And so these root causes, if you look at the trunk of the tree, have a bidirectional influence, which manifests as URM non-engagement in academic medicine, lack of URM representation and visibility, and a lack of community research among racial and ethnic minority groups. Next slide.
So given the systemic nature of these problems, our work group is really focused on developing initiatives and opportunities for us to directly increase the percentage of URiFM students, residents, and faculties who have the skills to really produce this scholarly research to, again, increase productivity amongst this group.
And part of our work includes Twitter chats as well as different webinars and workshops. So we've held some, for example, on how to develop a scholarly research relationship with your mentors and how to be proactive to make it productive, as well as workshops on writing a case report, and also even workshops on how to do data analysis and really get an understanding of some of the tools that are out there. We do in the future have upcoming writing labs or retreats where the idea is that we see other BIPOC out there in the world who are involved in family medicine and are also engaged in building tangible research skills. Also, the goal is to reduce that research anxiety so that research can really be accessible to all people. And I think that's really important because, as Angela mentioned earlier, it does impact, ultimately, it trickles down to what's available to our patients in terms of tailored interventions, prevention services, and treatments. So this is the work of our work group.
So I'll just take a moment and introduce PRiMER. So PRiMER is one of STFM's scholarly journals, and we are an open access journal, and our name stands for Peer-Reviewed Reports in Medical Education Research. And we have an editor group that has been working on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion issues over the past year. And this partnership with the URiFM Scholarship Work Group is one of those things that we've been working on. And two other things that we're working on are making membership to our editorial board more transparent in terms of the pathway to membership and also the selection process. And a call for a new associate editor will be going out pretty soon. So look for that in STFM publications and definitely apply. And if you have questions, feel free to contact one of us at the end of this presentation. And another thing that's coming down the pike soon is an editor mentor pilot program for your URiFM submitting authors. And so not quite prime time yet, but it will be coming soon. So be on the lookout for that. So to introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Kristen Bene. I'm the Education Associate Director at the Family Medicine Residency Program in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Hi, I'm Amy Lee. I'm Vice Chair for Academic Affairs at Tufts University School of Medicine in the Department of Family Medicine.
I'm Amanda Kost. I'm the Associate Director for Medical Student Education at the University of Washington in the Department of Family Medicine.
I'm Andrea Wendling, a Director of Rural Medicine for Michigan State University's College of Human Medicine.
All right, so thank you everyone for the for introductions. We're gonna move to kind of the meat of our presentation tonight. So just wanna go over our agenda. We have a presentation on the 6 steps. We're going to try to get that done in 20 minutes. And then we have some time for small group breakout sessions. And you all will be able to attend the small group breakout session that's going to be most beneficial to you. And we're going to spend about 20 minutes in that breakout session. And then we're going to come back as a large group to report out from these 3 breakout sessions, wrap up and answer any questions that folks have. So learning objectives, by the end of this workshop, folks that are in the workshop should be able to describe Glassicks' 6-step approach to scholarship. We want you to be able to apply one approach to systemic inquiry to an area of research interest that you have. And then we also want you to be able to critique a current research project that you have for areas of strength and also areas for improvement after you've heard a little bit more about these 6 steps. So this is a systematic approach to any kind of inquiry. This works for any sort of scholarship. Doesn't matter if it's educational research or clinical research. Glassicks 6 steps can help you find your way. So the first step is to have clear goals about your project. The second step is to adequately prepare. The third step is to select appropriate methods that are going to help you achieve your goals. The fourth step is to interpret and understand the significance of your results. And then after you have those results, you need to effectively present them. And that can be in a variety of forms, either through submission of a manuscript or through an abstract presentation at a conference. And then the last is reflective critique. And this allows you to understand how your project went, and then also to figure out what the next step should be for your scholarly area of focus. So we're going to go through each of these 6 steps in a little bit more detail tonight.
Great. So the first step is really making sure there's clear goals at the very start of a scholarly project. And the biggest tip I have in this area is to choose something you care about a lot, because you're going to spend a lot of time on this project. I think the longest time I spent on the research project that took me the longest from inception to finally publishing something was something in the 4 to 5 year range. Hopefully things go quicker. Like it'd be nice if it was only a year or two, but in reality, sometimes we would just spend years on the same project. So you pick something you care about and you like, because it just takes a long time sometimes. Other than that, just thinking about a few other areas that might help you come up with clear goals can be really helpful. So for example, thinking about your larger scholarship goals or area of scholarship that you want to focus on, how does this project fit into that larger goals? And if it's an outlier, is it worth your time and energy, or could there be something else maybe better worth your time? Is the answer that you're looking for important to the field? Are there people who really are waiting to know the information that you're going to find out? And that helps make the information you find out really important. And then, is there a clear research question that you can formulate, or a clear hypothesis? Or do you need to keep thinking about, mulling over what you might be interested in doing? What would be the most focused question to ask that could have a clear answer? And one thing that we often find as editors that is really helpful for us is when someone has a clear kind of answer that they're giving us in a publication. So for example, you could ask yourself, what do you want to be able to say at the end of this scholarly project if your project worked? And hopefully that's something important or meaningful, right, to the field. And then finally, just be sure that it's a clear, achievable, and measurable project using maybe SMART goals or something like that. Sometimes, we like to dream of like these huge, 10-year, it's going to cost millions of dollars project. And, some people are equipped for that and have the skills and, information to do that, but not all of us do. So just making sure that we choose a project that's actually achievable, that we can accomplish, and knowing how we can accomplish, that can all be really helpful as we set clear goals at the beginning of a project. Kristen.
Unmute. Okay, so I'm going to cover adequate preparation. So after you've set these really clear goals, you're ready to move on. And there are 2 parts of adequate preparation. The first is reviewing the literature, and the second is then writing the literature review. And, obviously we all know these 2 things are pretty fluid. You may be doing one as you're doing another. And on the next slide, you'll see that's actually something we really recommend. In terms of reviewing the literature, the first thing you would do, and I'm sure many of you have already done this for many projects, is conducting a baseline literature search. You're going to be really broad. You may be involving a medical librarian in this process. You may be doing your own research to start and then enlisting other people. And you're going to be doing a lot of reading and a lot of sifting through articles and asking yourself, where are the gaps? Because just because you're interested in something doesn't mean it's actually a gap in the literature. It might just mean that it's a part of the literature you haven't yet read. And asking yourself where you need, where do we need as a profession more information? Amy and I talked a lot when we were preparing about the idea of thinking expansively as you do your literature search, and really looking at areas of the literature adjacent to the area you're interested in. Definitely looking outside of family medicine, outside of medical education, outside of education sometimes into business or organizational development, because there are lots of different professions all over doing lots of great research that might be very, very similar to the thing that you are very interested in. We also talked about considering past terminology in this initial step, because language is constantly evolving. And so when you're doing your literature searches, really think about what this used to be called, this thing that you're interested in, and how people may have talked about it in the literature in the past, especially as you're laying the groundwork in your introduction for the historical perspective or sort of the foundational articles in that area. The terminology may have been different 20, 30, however many years ago. And then ask yourself, is this a publishable project? Who's your audience? Who was writing the literature you read? Who's reading the literature you read? And are any of those people going to care about this thing that you think you want to add to the literature? Next slide. And then you're ready to start writing the literature review. We really suggest a funnel approach. I think this is a really common approach to writing a literature review, where you're starting broad and you're narrowing and narrowing and narrowing toward the end of your introduction, where you say, and this, after all of those pieces of information, is where my project lives in the scope of this area of the literature. And this really helps you frame your scholarship appropriately. So, you can include things in the broad area like national or social conversations that are happening about this area you're interested in. Are there policy applications? For me, did the ACGME change some sort of really important rule or guideline that has led us to this point where we're devising a project to measure an intervention? So really sort of piecing those things together in this funnel approach of your literature review. And once you've done all that, you should have been able to come sort of narrow down to this refined research question that Amy talked about in the goal setting piece. And you probably have also written your preliminary background section of your lit review. Your intro, your review of the literature, if you're writing as you're going, and a lot of people do this in different ways. Some people might be copying and pasting quotes or important pieces of information into a spreadsheet. There are a lot of citation management tools out there. I'm sort of a highlighter and pencil notes in the margin of paper copies of articles person. But however you do it, you really should get to the end of these goal setting and adequate preparation steps with pieces of information to put together for your literature review. And then once you've done that, you can move on to methods. And Andrea.
So I'm going to talk about methods and how to structure the methods in the results section of a project. And I like to think of the methods as the who, what, where, when, and how of a project. So to talk through this, I want you to think about just a relatively easy conceptual project, like an evaluation of an educational intervention. And if we start with the who, we're going to ask, who are you going to study? So you could say residents or medical students, but usually that isn't enough to clearly define your study group. You really need to give enough information so people would be able to recreate your project if they wanted to. And so you will probably end up saying something as detailed as 3rd and 4th year medical students at my university who took my course. Okay, that would be your study group. Basically, who are you going to study specifically? The what then is both what will be studied and what will you use to study that. So for our example, what will be studied will be the educational intervention. And often when you're trying to describe this in the methods, it's a good place to use charts or figures to give the information about the intervention so that your methods don't get bogged down by all the details, but you still want to make sure that it's there. And then the second part of the what is, what did you use to study it? And so for that, it's like, was it a survey or an interview or focus groups? And whatever it is that you use, you want to give the details about that. So for example, if it was a survey, you want to give details like, was it validated? Was it tested? Did it come from a published instrument? What were the questions? Again, so that people have a really good idea of what you were studying and what you were using to study it. The where then is your setting. And again, here you want to describe it in a way that's going to make sense to others outside of your institution. So for Michigan State, I might say my setting was at a Midwestern public medical school. or someone else might say that their study was done at a residency in an urban community, or whatever it is that's important about your setting. And what you're trying to do here for your readers, for the people who are eventually going to be looking at your project, is they're trying to decide whether your setting is similar to their setting, or whether it's something that can be generalizable to their own setting. And so that's why it's important to include that. And then your when is, when was the study performed? And sometimes that's time, like April of 2020. But other times it's just relative, like a baseline was done prior to the intervention, or a survey was sent at the completion of the intervention. But you basically want readers to understand the chronological order and the timing of your interventions and your evaluations. And then finally, your how, which is how did you analyze the data? What were your comparison groups or your variables? How were they compared? Like, what statistical tests were used? Basically, how did you come to decisions about your data? Okay, next slide. Okay, and this is kind of a flow chart to help you think through things as you write your methods in your results sections. And so I'm just going to walk you through this. So the first piece of advice, make sure that your methods answer your study questions. So basically, if you want to know if an educational intervention teaches someone something, don't jump off and ask whether they like it. Okay, that doesn't tell you whether they learned anything from it. So you have to make sure that you're actually answering the questions that you set out to answer. You want to write your method section with enough detail that someone could replicate your study. I talked about that already. You need to include an IRB statement, and basically you need an IRB evaluation for just about anything to be published. And if you don't think it needs to go to the IRB, it's fine, but send it anyway and let them tell you that it's not human subjects research, because basically most journals will not accept that you made the decision yourself without an IRB. So if at some point you believe that you want to get it published, make sure you at least send it through your IRB and get that non-human subjects determination. And then your results section should flow from your methods section. So basically stick to the same order as you go through your methods and then your results. Give a result for everything that you said you were going to measure in the methods, and don't give data or results that you didn't foreshadow in your methods. So basically, if you want it to happen in your results, if you want to talk about it in your results section, then you really should be explaining it in the methods as well, and just make sure that they match. And then when you do this, and you start to write your results, especially, try to get numbers into tables and write using words. Okay, so if you finish a paragraph and you find it's mainly numbers, that usually is a pretty good indication that you might need a table instead. And then your words can be used to just highlight the most meaningful results, rather than putting all of the numbers into your manuscript. And then there are two things to check when you get to the point when you've got your methods and your results written. First, you want to take a step back and make sure that what you said you were going to do, which was essentially your study objectives, which, as Kristen said, was kind of the end of your background and introduction section, that what you said you were going to do is actually what you did in the methods, and then that the results you describe answer the questions that you set out to answer. So you basically want to make sure that all three of these sections are congruent. And then finally, as a last check, make sure that you don't have results in the methods section or methods in the results section, which honestly happens all of the time in submitted manuscripts, that researchers get excited and they start to put some results into their methods, or they decide in the results that they need to explain things a little bit better, and so pieces of methods end up there. Basically, as you read through it, thinking about each of those concepts, is this really a method or is this a result, is really helpful so that you get them into the correct sections. Okay.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about effective presentation and reflective critique. So once you've done all that and you have a manuscript, or you have an abstract written and you're ready to send it out into the world, I would say the first thing you need to do is find it a home. And if you don't know where to send it, you can go to this website called Jane. And all you need to do to figure out what journal may be interested in your work is to copy and paste your abstract into this. And so I've included the link. I use this almost every single time I'm getting ready to publish something because new journals come up all the time. And sometimes I'm not actually the best judge of where my journal may find a home. So if there are journals that you typically submit to and you want to go for that journal, that's great. But if you want to see what may be out there that may accept your manuscript too, this is a great place to start. Once you have found a journal and you're ready to submit your manuscript, please, please, please read the instructions to authors. These are lengthy, they are very detailed, they have lots of instructions, and they will totally help you prepare your manuscript for submission. Oftentimes as editors, what we will see, and sometimes we actually don't even see this, is things submitted to our journal that don't either go along with what our journal is trying to publish, or we publish only brief reports, so 1,000 words, and someone has submitted 3,000 words. And oftentimes that will not even make it to any editor. The managing staff person of the journal will just automatically reject that. And so, if you get a fast rejection, we might love what you've written, but if you wrote 3,000 words and we needed 1,000 words, we may never see what you've written. So read the author instructions, follow them carefully, and some of them even come with checklists, which I think are great. When I'm preparing a manuscript, I'll actually go through and kind of check off boxes of things that I needed to do to prepare my manuscript as I'm going. Same goes for conference abstracts. Make sure that you're answering all the questions that they want. Make sure that you're including each component when you're preparing an abstract or a presentation proposal, because this will increase the likelihood that you will be able to present your scholarship either through a published product or article or through a conference presentation. Got a couple more tips that I wish someone would have told me when I was starting out. Some people love writing, most people hate writing. I'm kind of one of those people that, I can get into it once I get into it, but you just got to carve out some time to do it. And I know we're busy in our day jobs and our day lives. But this is someplace where you need to pay yourself first. And so block out an hour of time. And if you don't have an hour of time, block out 25 minutes of time and use the Pomodoro method. And if you don't know about the Pomodoro method, it increases results dramatically. It's very simple. You set your phone timer to 25 minutes, you type as fast as you can. And this will increase the output that you have in terms of writing. And the hardest thing is getting the words down the first time. Then you just got to go back and edit. So just do it, do the Pomodoro method and schedule time for it. And then most journals want you to write in the active voice. So if you are someone, which this was totally me starting off, I wrote a lot in the passive voice. People got a lot of feedback about that. Make sure that you're actively describing what you're doing, because this will make the thing that you've written more interesting and feel more alive to the reader. One other piece of information in terms of effective presentation that I wish someone would have told me is when you're structuring your manuscript and you're talking about the introduction and then the methods, the results, and the discussion, you should be able to go back through and highlight kind of one main idea per paragraph. So, to go back to Andrea's study about seeing if the medical students learned something in the class that she taught, maybe the first paragraph that she introduces is, we need to do more in-depth rural medical education. And here's the gap that my literature review covers. And, there's 3 published curriculums. And that might be the second paragraph where you talk about the 3 published curriculums. And then you get to your third paragraph where you talk about, and here's this gap that I found in the literature, and I am going to aim to fill it. And here is my research question and my hypothesis. So this will help you structure your manuscript, and really also helps you tell a coherent story in the article that you're submitting. So these are some tips for effective presentation. And then finally, once you're done with all of this and you're writing your discussion section, you need to do some reflective critique. And this was honestly one of the hardest things for me to write when I was first writing, when I was supposed to discuss the strengths and limitations of my study. And I thought, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Maybe I'll make some stuff up. Or I also didn't want to tell the journal that my study sucked. So I didn't want to like point out the 25 flaws it had, because then I thought nobody would take it. But actually, really, really robust scholarship will critique the design, the measures, the procedures, the analysis. It will say, here are the things that I did well, and here are some things that I could have done better, and maybe that's what needs to be done in the next study. And honestly, pointing out the limitations will actually help the readers feel better about it, because you can often say what your own kind of structural limitations were. You know, maybe Andrea can't study every student out there taking a rural medicine class, right? There's some reason that she didn't survey everybody across the country. But pointing out those limitations will let the readers know what, you know, how generalizable are the results and what could the research be used in the future. And then the next step that you want to answer as you're critiquing is, how does this fit into what is known about the topic? So going all the way back to the goals, right? We want to tell them what our goal was and how this fits in. And then this is a really good place to harvest potential goals, is what is the next step? Did I answer my question? And then if I did, what's the next question? So really great discussion sections will have this critique about, here is the next step, either in my personal research agenda or my next project for this area of research or scholarship, or it will give other people ideas about what the gaps are that need to be filled. All right.
And there are several types of medical education research projects that you can do, several inquiries types. And you have here 4 of them. We'll start with the discovery one. So this is more like a traditional research study, something that we've all learned in our medical school or undergrad. So control versus intervention, or intervention 1 versus intervention 2. When you think about this in terms of medical education research, for example, you can say you have a curriculum with the same objectives that could be taught in person or virtual, right? Thinking about the pandemic and how we all had to change, or through TBL or through lectures. And then we study the outcome, and the outcome is whatever you want it to be. So you may want to look for learning of the students, right? So you may want to look at their skills. You may want to look at their knowledge. You may want to look at their satisfaction, for all that matter. You may want to look at their engagement. So looking at whatever your objective is. This is one of the most popular one, but a lot of times somewhat difficult to do for someone just starting education. Now, the teaching one seems to be more applicable to a lot of us. So this is when we develop curriculum, and we don't start from zero, right? We have to always look at the best practices, what's available out there. We all know about Med Portal and Academic Medicine and all these other journals and PRiMER. So you can look at what's out there in the literature. Let's say you're developing a curriculum in lifestyle medicine. What has been done in the past with this curriculum? You design your own curriculum looking at the best practices, and then you do your intervention, but systematically you study this intervention. Again, you can look at whatever you're interested in, maybe learning, maybe satisfaction, maybe engagement. So you study all of this, but in a systematic way, and you look at lesson learned. And a lot of these studies will also have focus group, either with learners or with the teachers. So that's another type of inquiry that's very available for any of the faculty of STFM, I believe. The other type, the third type, is called integration. And this one is synthesizing knowledge within a discipline. And you've heard today about the introduction, about the literature review. This is basically the literature review. So you can do your work that, in order to design a study, But first, you can publish that work in a systematic review or in a simple review. Of course, it has to have more details than an introduction, but that's the integration type. And it's kind of killing two birds with one stone if you're doing this. The fourth one is application. So using different things in the literature or from different literatures or different disciplines to solve a problem that you currently have. So we've talked a little bit earlier today about the SMART goals. Well, the SMART goals are very applicable in medical education and in psychology, but they were developed in the business curriculum, right? So somebody decided to take that the SMART goal approach and bring it to medicine. The same thing you could do thinking of these times that we live in, for example, how do you increase engagement for virtual teaching? So you could look at the online learning of undergrad and then apply it in your medical education virtual teaching that we all had to adapt to. So these are several types of inquiry you could choose depending on what are your goals and your skill levels and the amount of work you want to put in. Next, we're going to go to the small group session.
Thanks. So we have 3 small groups and you all get to select into your group. We're going to take about 10 minutes to discuss. Group 1 is going to talk about goals and preparation steps. Group 2 is going to talk about methods and results. And group 3 is going to talk about presentation and reflection. We ask that if possible, you can stay in the same group for the entire time of the small group discussion and that you select a speaker who's going to report out to the large group when we come back. So I'm going to stop the share and let our host make our breakout rooms, and then we can all start to file into them. I think most folks have made it back. We're going to spend about 2 to 3 minutes for hearing from each group reporting out. So group 1, goals and preparation. Can we hear what you all discussed?
So I forgot to ask for a volunteer to do that. So I'm going to report on what we have discussed. So the last thing that we discussed was make sure if you are affiliated with an academic program, or if you want to get affiliated with academic program, you ask for a % FTE for research. A lot of us make the mistake of not asking for a special time, and then it just makes it really hard to do research in your extra time, outside your day job. So just please ask for % FTE. You will be surprised that actually you will get it if you ask for it in advance. 3 more important things we talked about. Start with small specific goals. So your project might be double dipping, triple dipping, but start with a small goal so that you don't get overwhelmed. First, set your goal and then kind of look at what type of inquiry you're going to do. The first is your goal, as you saw in the 6 steps. First is your goal. The other thing we talked about when you're looking, when you have an objective and you're looking at what do you think could be the cost for this to design an intervention, look broadly at the literature or start with some focus groups to determine kind of several of those causes rather than focusing really early and then maybe ignoring some important causes or important interventions. This is it.
Thanks. Group 2?
We have Kento.
Yes. All right. So we are method section. So we talk about when we conceptualize a project, we sometimes think of multiple projects, and so important to make the project to be attainable and feasible. And also we talk about the response rate. So if the response rate is good, it's no problem. But if the response rate is 25% or 5%, we need to tweak how we want to say from that project. For instance, if the survey response rate is 5%, we should not say this is representative of that population. But instead, we can say this is, starting point. This is descriptive project. So that's something we talk about. And also, if that a population is a different, the population size is different, that kind of the different story too. Because if we study somebody just for that residency, the response rate should be higher. But if we do a national data survey, can be lower. I'm not saying that the low is good, but it can be acceptable in the national data survey. And also, Cesar shared the response rate website, how to define how, what we can consider. So please feel free to add if I missed something or important.
Thank you. Group 3.
Yeah, in group 3, we spend a little bit of time bringing some additional clarity to how to conceptualize or think about reflective critique. And so we spend a little bit of time thinking about really an internal process of reflection and continuing to think about lessons learned throughout that research process, and then that external critique that is going to more so be written out and disseminated through the publication. And in this conversation, we also anchored back to looking at those guidelines that are laid out by the journal itself, because oftentimes they offer some additional clarity and steps in terms of what they're looking for in that limitation section. Another part of the conversation was just kind of, I think, real life challenges. So one of those is, what happens when, as you're perhaps even trying to think about some of the conclusions or limitations of your work, that you find yourself actually going in a different direction, and that maybe your interests start pulling you somewhere else. How do you kind of navigate that piece? And then also just the general challenges of finding the time and the support to be writing and engaging in scholarship when, again, you're pulled in a lot of different directions. And sometimes you don't have as much immediate support to get that motivation up. So we've talked about just a little bit about relying on some accountability partners, whether that's a mentor or a peer mentor, and creating some more of those formal opportunities to put that 25 minutes on the schedule to get the writing process going.
Thanks. All right. So as we wrap up, we'd just like to share with you a couple of upcoming events at the STFM Medical Student Education Conference, which is virtual this year. One is on peer reviewing, and then the other is on succeeding as a scholar underrepresented in family medicine, a beginner's guide. And that will be, the first one will be done by the PRiMER group, and the second one will be done by the URiFM group. So please attend these if you're going to come to MSE.
We really want to thank you for your participation, and hopefully too, the idea that you see as you were in your breakout rooms or even in these sessions, and just realizing that BIPOC individuals can engage in research, and that we're here to actually support one another. So please do sign up for future events. We intend to have these writing groups where even just being in silence with other people who are all about family med research and who have gone through this struggle or aren't familiar with the hidden curriculum, that is important, just to share that virtual space together. So please do sign up. And also, we do have an evaluation for you all to complete in regards to the session today. And next slide. We also really want you to reach out to us. We are here to support you. We are here to help guide you, to make the hidden curriculum more explicit, more visible to you all, so that you all can succeed, especially when you're a person of color that maybe doesn't quite have all the context and the explicit curriculum. We are here to support you, both the URiFM group as well as the PRiMER group. We also, as Amanda mentioned, have these future PRiMER events where we're going to have one-on-one mentorship and support for individuals to review the submission so that you increase your likelihood for getting published. We know that in academia, getting published, getting those peer-reviewed articles are really important for promotion and for moving along career, and especially for leadership positions. So please do sign up for future events and complete the evaluation. Anything else from Amanda or anyone else from the team? Oh my, is it real? We still have 1 minute, everyone. So hold on. We're gonna give it till, we're gonna squeeze this out until 8 o'clock. But just take a look around you and just look at your faces and the pictures that are there, and just recognize that we are all capable of doing this. And that, for example, I'm the first in my family to graduate high school, and we can all do this together. So please, please, please sign up for future events. And is Dr. Jayshree Allen in the mix? Is she
Oh,
here?
I just saw her. She's here. She's here. She's here.
Hi, I am here. I'm here, but I am nursing my little 6-week-old baby. I just got home, so just supporting from afar.
Well, we love seeing your and hearing your voice. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and for joining us this evening. Everyone, take good care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.